Hello,
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Yes, a little bit nicer weather this week, or cooler weather this weekend, which has been good.
Yeah, we just got off one of the lakes up here, and it's very nice today.
Nice. Oh, that's good. Yeah, what lake is that?
It's Elk Lake. It's up by Hoffman.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of the little lakes around here are kind of green and yucky, but that one's spring fed and deeper, so
Nice.
it's actually pretty nice to
Can
boat
you
on.
fish? Does it
We weren't fishing. We were just the
Dookie?
four of us just went out and swam and boated around and hung
Nice.
out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that is nice to do. It actually is one of I love the one of my favorite drives in Minnesota is that Glacier Ridge Trail. Is that what it's called? Whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Glacial Ridge. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
it's
pretty.
so
Yeah.
anyway, how's everything else going?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, we're
Getting back to normal or not so much?
not so much. I don't know. We'll be back to normal for a long time, but
Yeah.
um, we've had a recent uptick with COVID here, which
Oh, is that right?
we're a tiny county, but we had 2 cases as of 2 weeks ago. Now we're up to like 12. So
Oh,
for
wow.
us, that's a
No,
lot.
no, that's right. And are students coming back?
Students are coming back. They have an option to stay home and uh, you know do it by Zoom or whatever. But uh, so far, they're coming back, so that'd be good.
Yeah, that is good.
But we'll see.
Well, right. It's all kind of up in the air, I suppose. I have two kids. One that'll be a senior this year in college, and I have three kids, but one will be a senior in college, and one will be a freshman. And so they're both planning to go back right now, but we'll see how it all shakes out, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so
Mm,
yeah, so they're and they really want to get going, you know.
yeah.
They don't want to wait around anymore. So
My kids too. I've got a junior in high school, and then I've got a freshman, and they want to go back.
yes, yeah,
The distance learning thing got a little old last year.
yeah, it gets tricky. Yeah, so a class. I did a social studies class out there over the distance learning time period. Kind of did a remote like this, basically talking about the courts, and it was nice. It was interesting. So,
Yeah,
um, but I think it would get old
yeah,
and just not as good. I feel like.
yeah. Well, the nice thing that's come out of this though is this kind of communication for short meetings, and
Oh,
you know,
yes,
it's been great. Uh,
I totally agree. Yes, it's well, we've done our hearings this way,
yeah,
which has its advantages and disadvantages, but especially for meetings like this, so there's no travel time and all that kind of stuff. It just makes it easier. I agree.
right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
for us out here too, we actually don't have our own jail in Stevens County, so we contract out,
Right.
and we've had a lot of the hearings, where the defendants will be right in the jail, and we don't have to transport them back and forth. It saved everybody so much more time.
You think the people continue to do that afterwards?
I think if it's allowed, we'll continue to do it because
Yeah.
it's been a real benefit,
Yeah.
and I can see, well, even when we need a witness, say like from the BCA, a lot of times they got to drive out 3 hours to come and testify for 15 minutes.
Right. No, exactly. I think that is exactly right. Trials are a whole different thing, I suppose. But even so for trials or for hearings, you're talking about.
Well, obviously the whole trial can't be done that way, but for a witness to come and
Yeah.
testify, it'd be nice to have that option for certain witnesses anyway.
Yeah. No, that's right. and save the time and all that. I agree. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. Are you, Judge?
Good morning, or good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again. I see my name on the screen is listed as Helen Staffsholt, but that's not me, that's my wife. And
I figured that one out, yes.
yeah, and she worked on your campaign for governor.
I remember very well, yes. So, yes. How's she doing?
Aging gracefully, you know, like I am.
Good. Good.
So, yeah, this is an interesting way to communicate. I never heard of Zoom before this Corona crisis started, COVID crisis.
Right.
Now I use it quite a bit.
Yeah, I hadn't either. So, but it's kind of how so much gets done now.
Yeah.
So, that's exactly right.
No, but
Quick question. Paul, did you hit record, or Aaron, was that you?
Wasn't me.
And it wasn't me either.
Okay.
Maybe it's just automatic. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask Darby.
Okay. I mean, it's fine, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Just need to figure out how to get it after it's over.
that's right. Yes. Oh, I see. Right.
is this a Zoom meeting for more than the District Bar Association? Is it several groups involved?
It's just it's a public kind of invitation, a little, yeah.
Okay.
So, so it'll be lawyers and other folks as well. I have a friend who's a teacher in Morris at the high school, and I think he might have invited some folks, and yeah, so it'll be good that way. So
Who's his friend at the high school?
and now I'm blanking on his name. Oh boy, you have it, Matt, right? Geez, I'm really embarrassed right now.
Oh, no.
But I swam with him when I was a kid.
Names are my Achilles heel.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be for me, but hold on. Yeah, Tom Howden.
Oh, Houghton. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we
History teacher for both my kids.
is that right? Yeah. So we grew up together in Bloomington and swam for the Bloomington, swimming club for many years together. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
Mention that to him the next time I see him.
Yeah. Well, he may come on today. I don't know if he will or not. So
Yeah.
we will see. Yes. And and the radio, I think, in Morris did a little thing a couple days ago, which was nice of them too. So
I heard you were on the radio.
yeah.
And the Alexandria newspaper had a nice article about these Zoom meetings too.
Oh, good. All right. That's great. So, how are you, Mona?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Good to
Well,
see
you
you.
look good.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I'm kind of casual today, but it is Sunday afternoon, I guess.
Everybody is.
That's right. That's right. You've been doing well?
Pretty well. I can't complain. I'm getting kind of bored, but that's the way it is.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
I've been reading a lot of books, so I'm all caught up on that.
Good. Any good recommendations?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have one good one, but it's written by a Republican. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
I've heard Dean Erdahl speak a couple of times at our Norwegian conventions we've had. And I finally got around to reading his book called Uprising.
Yes, I read it. Yeah.
It's really good, and it all that took place relatively close to where I grew up, so I knew a lot of the locations and the names of people, so it was very interesting.
Oh no, I thought he did a nice job with it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of back in the news again a little bit with all the discussion of monuments and everything, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, not exact, but you know, the issues with the Dakota uprising. So, yeah, it's been interesting. Oh, that's good. Yeah, he's a good guy. So, what's what Norwegian convention?
It's called the Valdres Samband. And it's the people who have descended from the central southern part of Norway get together once every summer. We didn't do it this summer, of course, but we did have our virtual convention yesterday. It worked out pretty well, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Hi,
Robin.
So, hey, how are you guys? So the central southern part of, so not kind of the very tip of Norway.
Not the very tip, no.
So kind of the mountains?
It's called the Valdres River Valley, actually. It's kind of like maybe about the size of 7 or 8 of our counties put together.
Okay.
It's called Oppland, Oppland.
Okay.
And that's divided into 7 or 8 different types of, well, different counties, basically.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And so did a lot of folks from there come to Minnesota then? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, North and South Dakota. So a lot of our members are from, will live in this area. We have some people live out of state, but
yeah,
a lot of them from right around here.
Well, that's great. Very nice.
Fun.
So, hey, how are you guys?
Hi,
Hey,
Paul.
good to see you.
You too.
Good to
Hi,
see you.
Mona, too.
Yeah. Well, how's everything with you?
We're good.
Yeah, good.
Mhm.
And how about the kids?
Good.
Are they
Everything's
still
going-
in Nevada?
No, that daughter moved back here. She got remarried, and
Okay.
so she lives by Elba Lake. And then
Okay.
one moved from New York to California. other
Okay.
Oh, well.
We've got one in California too.
Yeah, near LA. So yeah,
Okay. But everybody's well so far?
so far so
Wow.
good.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Very good. All right.
How
So
are you doing?
I'm, well, I mean, all things considered, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we, all of our kids, we have one in college. Emily will be a senior next year. And then one of my boys will be going to college next year as a freshman. And then I'll have a senior in high school.
Okay.
And so they've all been back. It's kind of been a gift to us, I feel
Yeah.
like a little bit, but I'm not sure they see it the same way. So,
Probably not. Yeah.
but so far everything is on track for both of them to go back.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, the only thing, Emily's she's a soccer player, and her season she just found out got canceled. So that was too bad.
Mhm.
But aside from that, everybody's still healthy, and we're good that way.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yes. So, all right. So I don't, why don't, it's a little bit at 4:04. Why don't we just get started, and as people join or not, we can do that. How about that? Does that work for everybody?
Sounds good.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, I just want to thank everybody for joining. I appreciate it. The reason that we're having these town meetings are, kind of twofold, I suppose. One, a bit more noble is, it's a chance to get out. I think one of the things we need to do as judges and as the court is to get out and, be a little more transparent and talk to people more about what we do and all of that stuff. And then, of course, there's, another reason, which is that I'm up for election in November. And so we're just trying to get the word out on a number of fronts. I mean, one, about my campaign, but more importantly, or as importantly, just the fact that we actually vote for judges, and that people can understand, maybe what you ought to look for when you're voting for a judge, and why the courts matter, and why it's important that you actually pay attention to the judicial races, because the drop off is probably 25%. People that vote for president and senator, about 25% don't make it down to vote for judge. And so we're trying to increase that number as well, because we think the more, we are going to elect judges, the more people that vote, the better, right? So that's kind of the gist. But the other part of it is really to hear from folks about questions they might have about the courts and issues or concerns they have about what's happening with the courts, or good things that they've seen happening with the courts that they'd like to see expanded or added a little bit. So I guess I'm going to just run through a few things, and then we can kind of just have a conversation here after that. The first thing, so one of the things, I like to do is go around and talk to high schools. I was just telling some folks when Morris High School went virtual this spring, I did an online kind of presentation for their senior class students. But the thing I really like to talk about to students with is, a lot of times they just think of the courts as some thing that's off to the side, that's really kind of tangential to their lives. And what I try to convey is, that's not really the case hopefully it's the case for them as individuals, I suppose, but for Minnesotans in general, that's not really the case. When you go out to any of our 87 county courthouses, they're incredibly busy places. And 1.5 million cases a year are heard in Minnesota courts. And the vast majority of those cases are things that are really fundamental to people's lives. Whether they're going to have a roof over their head, whether families are going to stay together, whether our communities are going to be safe, or someone is going to be in jail, awaiting trial, whether an economic problem is going to turn into an economic catastrophe. These are, the most fundamental things that affect Minnesotans' lives and their ability to succeed and prosper. And that's what courts spend most of their time working out, disputes about those kind of things. And so that's why I think these elections are so important. And also when I, think about it from a little higher level, really what the courts are doing and what law is about is kind of coming up with the rules about how we live together, right, as community. And again, that's really a very, very fundamental part of our society, fundamental part of our government, maybe the most direct impact of any part of our government has on people. So who people vote for judges, I think, is really, really important. And, one of the reasons I share this with all of you, because I know, you all kind of know that, but one of the things that's really important is when you have conversations with your friends and neighbors and colleagues, as the election starts to approach, talking to them about why the courts matter and why it's important to pay attention to judges. That's the reason, really, that the things that really impact people's everyday most fundamental parts of their lives happen in courts. And so paying attention is really important from that perspective. Just a little bit, and most of you kind of know a lot of this background, but some of it maybe not the legal part, but just a little bit of background about me. Obviously this is a judicial role, it's a legal role. I served in the legislature, obviously, for 16 years. Most of you know that. But I also worked as a lawyer for a quarter of a century, 25 years before I became, before Governor Dayton appointed me to the bench. I served as a public defender for a couple of years. I worked for a law firm called Briggs & Morgan, which has a different name now, but doing complex business litigation for a lot of companies here in Minnesota, large and small. I worked for another firm where I did healthcare and long-term care, transactional and regulatory work. And the reason I bring those things up is that one of the things that I've learned in the 2 years I've been on the job, is how our court works is, we'll get the briefs and the lawyers will write their briefs and they'll come and present oral arguments to us. Each side gets about a half an hour to make their pitch to us. And most of it is spent answering questions from us. But then after that, we go into a room, just the 7 of us on the court, and we go around the room and kind of explain how we think the case should come out and the reasons why. And obviously we pay attention to the lawyer's arguments. We pay attention to the statutes and the case law and all of those things. But we also, I'm surprised, and it doesn't always make it in the opinion, but kind of the professional and personal experiences that we've had, our lived experience, really do play out. And so kind of the experiences, the breadth of experience I've had in criminal work, in complex transactional and litigation work, all of those things. That legal experience, I think, is something that's really important that I can bring to the table when we're having those conversations. The legislative work, again, many people know that I served in the legislature for 16 years. I served as speaker for a couple of years. One of the things we do as a court is interpret statutes. So there's some practical value to having actually passed statutes and understand how that process works. But the bigger gift I think that I got from serving in the legislature is the fact that I got to travel all around the state of Minnesota, all 87 counties, and talk to people in their homes, in their businesses, and in schools and churches, and wherever. And that sense of what people of Minnesota's kind of aspirations are and hopes are and fears and concerns are, that stuff sticks with you, those conversations. And I think the ability to bring those stories indirectly, but to the decisions that we're making, to make sure that they're consistent kind of with the values of the people of Minnesota, I also think is a real advantage that I take from that experience, and that I think bring to the table when we make our decisions as a court. And the last thing I just want to touch on, because I think it's important for everybody in Minnesota to really think about this issue. I did a lot of pro bono work, so free legal work for people that can't otherwise afford it. When I was a lawyer, I chaired our pro bono committee at the law firm for many years, and it's that access to justice issue is a real important issue for me, and I think should be an important issue for all of us. I mean, the reality is, in Minnesota today, even though we have great legal services people that provide legal aid services, they have to turn around 60, 70,000 people who would otherwise qualify every year because there's just not enough resources to go around. And when you think about what that means for Minnesota's courts and justice system and people's, those individual cases, obviously, but more importantly, the legitimacy of the court as a place where people can get their disputes resolved fairly and have their voices heard, it starts to undermine that legitimacy. And so it's something that we really need to work on in Minnesota to close that justice gap. And there's many things that we can do. And again, lots of people, legal aid lawyers, but also other lawyers who are doing pro bono services, kind of all across the board are stepping up to help with that. But it's one of the things that I've learned on the court in the 2 years, again, that I've been there is, I knew that we would issue opinions and, issue decisions. What I didn't know is that the Supreme Court actually has fairly extensive authority over the operations of the courts in general. The rules, we decide ultimately what the rules of procedure and all of those things are, and also what kind of institutional things we can put in place, programs we can put in place to make sure that people's voices are actually heard. And so that's something that I've kind of taken on in my first 2 years there, and I want to continue to do that again to make sure that, and this is, the reality is, it's where this access issue shows up most often is people, poorer people, obviously, that can't afford a lawyer, communities of color, and in rural communities where there's just fewer resources to go around in general. So closing that gap is something I've been working hard on, and we are pursuing some pretty creative ways to accomplish that, kind of thinking outside the box ways. And we're going to need to continue to do that if we want kind of a fair and legitimate process and legal system. And I guess the last thing I would just touch on is just the campaign a little bit. So I do have one opponent. Her name is Mcdonald. She's run 3 times before. So this is her 4th race for the Supreme Court. So she's run each year since 2014. And she has, done quite well, frankly. She's, gotten between 40 and 46% of the vote without really running much of a campaign. So that's one of the reasons we really want to get out there, and we're running a fairly aggressive campaign. And that's where, everybody can come in. I mean, and the biggest thing that people can do really is, again, to share that this campaign is happening, that these judicial campaigns really matter in terms of setting the law and setting the agenda for Minnesota, and share with your neighbors, what you think makes a good justice. The things that I think are really important, are kind of curiosity, respect for people, willingness to listen to everybody's voices, a broad legal background, and ability to kind of handle the complexity of some of the tougher cases. We face some pretty tough cases at the Supreme Court. Those are the things, that temperament about kind of fairness, impartiality, being willing to listen to people is really what matters, and to dig into the facts and really want to understand the story. and that I think I can bring to the race. And I hope that, you can all help get that word out. But also, follow us on social media. We're doing a lot of work, obviously, with the virus going around. We can't do public stuff. We're doing a lot more on the internet, both kind of through ad campaigns that we're running on the internet, but also through social media. So engaging on the social media would be really helpful. And then the last thing I guess I would say is, to visit our website at paulthissen.com. There's information there about the campaign, but also a chance to sign up as a public supporter. We're trying to put together as big a public supporter list and diverse a public supporter list as we can. And so just going to there's a link right there. It'll take probably 30 seconds to do. If you're willing to do that, that would be really great. But with that, I guess what I'd love to do is just kind of open it up for questions or conversation that anybody wants to have. Just let me know. Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if it'd be possible, or what do you think of creating a Supreme Court committee to educate and to study and educate judges on hidden racism? I recently finished a book called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and I recommend it reading for everybody. But so many people that grew up in the predominantly white community have kind of hidden prejudice that they don't realize, even if they're well-intended, intelligent people. And so I learned a lot about that, and I think it'd be a good book to present to all of the judges, and maybe have a committee set up to study this issue further. And in that regard, also, I think maybe it's time to consider alternatives to cash bail, because high bail and fines discriminates against poor people a lot. And I think we get some unfortunate results because of that. So that's just my suggestions.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing them. On the second issue, on the cash bail, I mean, two things I guess I would say. One is that the court is looking at it and is moving in the direction of a more neutral approach to handling how bail is set and what conditions are set for probation. But I also tend to agree with you. I mean, if cash bail, in the past, what it was really about is making sure that people come back to court. And I think that there are, if someone is a real public safety risk, I think you don't let them out, right? And if they're not a public safety risk, there's other ways with technology perhaps that we can deal with it that doesn't create this income inequity that's built into cash bail. So I do think that that's something that we should much more seriously consider. And people are starting to look at it, but it's something that I'm paying attention to. With regard to kind of the implicit bias and those types of things, I mean, that is something that judges do get training on. Not every judge, but it's becoming more common, and especially for newer judges as they're brought onto the bench and that new judges training, it's part of it. And so it's not as consistent though as it probably should or could be, and we can do, I think we should and can do more on that. I also think it's important that we start to look more carefully, and we are as a court, but look more carefully at jurors as well, and at least providing some background in the kind of jury. And we do a little bit, but we probably could do some more as juries are brought on, as new jurors, or as the veneer is put together, to at least give people a little bit of overview about thinking about that before they sit on the jury. So and kind of more fundamentally to your issue, the fact is, our courts are not immune from the racism that has affected our society for decades and centuries, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can, both in kind of how we instruct juries, how juries get put together, how our cases are decided, and if there's cases that we've decided 50 years ago that are based on a kind of an outdated conception of racial issues, we ought to revisit that as well. It should be, to me, kind of racial bias should be as important a value in deciding cases as we place on, finality, as we place on, other things that are not, purely legal, but that are kind of institutional interests we have. It should rank as in priorities up there with all of those things.
Thank you.
Other questions that people have, or comments, or what have you?
Paul, I do have a question. And I remember before I ran for office, whenever I came to vote, when I came to the judges, I had no clue who
Yes.
anyone was. Is there a better way to get your name out for all people running for an office, a judgeship?
Well, there's a couple of, it's kind of, I don't know if I have a really good answer. I mean, this is a very different race than any race that I've run before because of a lot of these issues, and just because of the kind of low information that's available. And, because of the nature of running for judge, there's fewer signals you can send out. It's a nonpartisan race, and it's, and you can't talk about a lot of the issues you talk about if you're running for a partisan office. There's a couple things though. The Bar Association does do what they call a plebiscite. So there's the lawyers in August or maybe early September in Minnesota will take a vote and kind of make a recommendation for people. It's a pretty good objective test, I think. And they will they'll make an effort to get it out. But part of it is just, getting, it's kind of on me and on judges. We need to get out more, talk to people, be more comfortable getting out and talking to editorial boards, talking to, all the kind of sources that you can get out there to raise up the profile of these kind of races. I think, there's a good debate to be had about whether judicial elections make sense or not at some level. And I think there's good reasons for them, and there's, some not good reasons for them. But if we're going to have them, we should engage in them, more like the fact that these are elected offices and people should know. The other thing I think we can do though, and this is, I think a particular responsibility for lawyers, but I think it is for educated citizens as well, is to really understand what courts do and what judges do. Because then people can start, they can see that it matters, but they can also start to make informed judgments about what we want to be looking for in a judge. I don't have a great answer for you. It's tricky, but that's one of the reasons we're doing these and, trying to get on the radio and doing all that kind of stuff.
If I remember the last time, I had the same question. It was surprising. But the last time I remember voting, I think it says by the judges, incumbent or not, right?
It does, yes.
Because that was actually, if I had never heard of them, I would vote for the incumbent. And remember last race, there was some word out there about one of the persons running about maybe not voting for that person. I remember that. It wasn't an incumbent. I don't know if it was this gal, but anyway, I remember that was the only time I really remember learning something about somebody running. So
yes, yeah, and so yeah, and yeah. That is right. So so that is one signal, the incumbent, and the thing that's important to know about that, because is that we do have in Minnesota a judicial selection commission that ultimately advises the governor on who to appoint, and that selection commission does a lot of background work and makes 3 recommendations to the governor, and the governor typically, I don't remember when this hasn't happened, but typically chooses among the 3. I guess there were 4 recommendations when I was appointed. And so I think also knowing that there's actually a very serious process that goes into vetting judges is also helpful information for people to have, knowing that incumbent actually means means that as well.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Aaron.
How much discussion or how much involvement, I should say, do you have in the budget discussions for the judicial branch every year? Is that something you take part in, or is that
well, I mean, so I guess that the answer is probably no. I mean, we do, I do tangentially. That's much more of the chief's job. So the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, working with our staff there, put the budget into the legislature, and then kind of and there's a little bit of a formula about how it gets divided up among the districts, and then there's the Judicial Council. So that includes the chief justices of all the district court judicial districts, the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, and then a couple other judges who sit on that. And they deal much more kind of directly with the budget decisions. So as an example right now, we're obviously facing a state budget deficit that'll impact the courts just as much as, I don't know, just as much, but it will impact the courts just like it will impact, all the other services of state government. And so we are, currently making decisions about, we're holding back on spending decisions right now, anticipating that we're going to have to make some cuts. So we've been involved in some of those discussions. I guess the other thing I would say, though, is, one of the things I do is I'm the liaison justice to the 8th Judicial District. So that's kind of Wilmer and Olivia and Montevideo north to Grant County, I suppose, and kind of west. And so it's the area, it's your area. And one of the things that, that I've been advocating for is acknowledging, that the judges that work out there have significantly more burdens on them because of travel time, because they serve multiple counties and they're often the only judge in a county. And so that they can't be treated in the same way in terms of counting the number of judges that are needed as a place like Hennepin County, where I live, where, there's many, many more judges, many, many more cases, but they don't have the same kind of distance and lack of density that does drive up costs, right? And so that's one of the voices I try to bring to the court when we're having these discussions around what we should do with our budgets.
Okay. Well, something to put on your plate then as our liaison, then just something to think about, I guess, is, with our drug court out here, especially in what we call the northern assignment area, it's been a point of frustration that on one hand, we get from the judicial branch that they really want us to do drug courts, and I fully support that. That's great. On the other hand, they don't want to fund it, and it's difficult. A scenario that I see in ours is that we've struggled to get agents, probation agents, to come, good probation agents to come and serve our area. And I think a small part of it anyways, is that why would you apply for a job that you don't know a year from now will exist? Because it's a constant, are we going to cut this? Is this going to be, it's not treated as something that's just established and permanent. It's something that, hey, when budget cuts come around, this is the first thing we're going to cut, this drug court, because it's not seen as, essential or something like that. And I think until that gets addressed, we're just not going to have the effectiveness in our area that we could have if we would fully fund it and treat it as something that's just regular court now. With drug offenders, we're not sending them to prison. We're gonna put them in treatment courts, and we're going to treat them like patients rather than people that we need to send off to prison. Until that's funded fully, we're not going to get that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for raising that, and I think that's. Part of the challenge is that it's one of those things that it gets funded from multiple. The counties have a role in it, the courts have a role in it, the legislature. So when it's nobody's baby in a sense, it kind of falls into that gray zone, and so that we gotta. That's one of the kind of institutional things we got to work out. But on the other hand, I absolutely agree with you that. I've gone to the Hennepin County and one other county's drug has sat in for a day to watch it, and it is remarkable. What happens is for those that don't know is the judge and the prosecutor and the public defender and the probation officers will all sit around a table before they go into court and walk through each of the clients, I guess you would call them, the people that are in the drug court, and talk about how they've been doing, and what issues are coming up, how they can address the issues. It's a pretty remarkable thing, and really, in some sense, kind of redefines how you achieve justice, right? It's a different way of thinking about that. And so the more that we can, I think we should move more things in that direction, if we could. There's a resource issue. And then, and the flip side of that is, when I've gone on what we call ride-along, so I'll go and sit with a judge. I sat with judges in Wilmer and down in Olivia, for a day, and they hear, all, criminal cases, family law cases, all kinds of cases. 75% of the cases, drugs are involved. It's really, our criminal justice system and drugs are so intimately linked that way that, it's just that's all to kind of support what you're saying. And I strongly support the drug courts, and, I should really think harder about what more we can do to make sure that they're kind of fully funded everywhere, so everybody has access to that. And mental health courts are the same way, and veterans courts. There's a lot of models out there about how we can treat people more kind of as individuals as opposed to just case numbers. And that's at the end what it's all about.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, if not, I don't want to take up a beautiful Sunday afternoon for everybody, or any more of it than I need to. But I guess I would just leave. Well, first of all, it was really good to see all of you. It's been too long for many of you, and it's so. I would much rather be there in person, but this is the second best thing. And if you can visit the website and kind of click on the supporter link and spread the word about the campaign, it would be hugely helpful. And there's also contact information there. So if you want to get a hold with me if something comes up to mind later on, you can reach out to me that way. Oh, Tom is joining us. Hi, Tom. How you doing? Oh, you're on mute, I think, still.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah. So we were just kind of answering a couple questions, and I think getting close to wrapping up. But if you had anything you wanted to add, or how's everything going with you?
Well, being a school teacher, I love making plans in triplicate right now, but
yeah, right.
Nevertheless, I'd love to hear what you guys have already talked about and whatnot, and go.
We've talked, a little bit about what the courts do. People asked about the drug courts. We had talked a little bit about drug courts and helping fund that. Talked about how judicial elections are a little bit different than other types of elections, and how you got to communicate in a different way. Talked to, and I kind of ran through some of my background and stuff, which I think a good amount about. So that's kind of where we've been. But I don't know if you have any particular questions or thoughts that you wanted to share.
Well, definitely, I wanted to be here to support you. You did a great job with my civics classes this year. You were the #1 feedback component. They loved how you answered their questions. You loved how you talked about that. So, like I said, that's probably my biggest thing here. I'm always interested in what, you have to say. I guess I'm biased from the good old days of childhood.
Right.
I've always known you're that kind of hard working dude. But nevertheless, yeah, I think it's just, we got to make sure, like in your case, having a competent type people in the right positions in the justice system, from top to bottom at this point, to make sure things are getting done, in a fair and just manner. Right.
And that's what it comes down to. And I said it, I was saying at the beginning, one of my favorite things to do is go and talk to the high school students, because they really do ask good questions. And there's always one or two that I've never heard before. So which is good. It keeps you on your toes. So that's right.
Yeah.
And I got some nice thank you notes from people, by the way, for whatever it's worth. So that was nice. That was good of them.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I just, it's one of those things, I just suggest that they do that.
Yes. Right. Well, some did. So
I emailed the governor and suggested you get a gold star from him too. He'll be a gold teacher. I don't know if he got you one or not, but I got a reply that they got my email and was
okay. Good. Yes. He's been pretty distracted lately, I think. So
yeah.
little bit going on. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, well, that's good.
Yeah. One thing I did, my thinking was, have you talked about any, your view of where the justice system should go in terms of the George Floyd and whatnot?
We did have a little bit of discussion of that, and kind of talked, about implicit bias training for judges, and I mean, there's a whole slew of issues, right? Some of which have to do with policing and prosecution and all that, but and that I don't feel like I should or need to weigh into kind of that part of the system. I mean, I think there's that, but the courts themselves, just in how we do our business, I mean, that certainly is something that I and the rest of the judges have responsibility for. So, things like training, implicit bias training for judges, for jurors, and for others, I think is something we can do. How we set up our systems to make sure that that we are paying attention to the things that can, for instance, there in some of the tests that we've established in the past for, whether evidence should be let in or not, right? They were developed, 30, 40, 50 years ago sometimes, right? We follow our precedent once we set the rule of law. And some of those tests, were set up at a time where, the court probably had in its mind, we're making assumptions about people that we probably wouldn't make if we were making the decision today. And I do think that going back and kind of reviewing our case law, the rules we've set up with an eye to, do they set up some of these systematic racial injustices, is something that we need to pay a lot more attention to, and something that I'm trying to bring to bear in the work that I'm doing. So we have, racism affects courts just like everything else, and we need to fix it.
Absolutely.
So just like I'm sure you're having similar discussions, it's in all of our institutions. So.
Right. It's now, we're always reviewing in a school setting, the text that we're using, because, you got to look at where, in the digital world, we have to look at the source, where it's coming from. But, in the books that we're using, that some of them were, have rather old, unintended type biases and whatnot. And so we kind of pointed out, but, and it is a tough change for humans to take, but.
It is, yes. We all just have to keep working at it. So.
All right. So.
Oh, can I ask one last question?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
We talked about budget shortfalls, and we've both been through this before. And at one time, in sparsely populated areas, they talked about closing courts. Is that possibly going to happen shortly?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't, unless we hit a Great Depression. I don't think so. If anything, we need to, get more judges in place. And that would be my sense. And to the extent that the court is going to face a budget shortfall, I guess I would say two things. I think the court over the last decade, and this is a credit to Chief Justice Gilday, has done a lot to create efficiencies in our court system. Much more is done online. There's much less paper. It's just it's a more efficient system. And we've, I think, done a lot to make sure that that's where our savings are generated instead of in judges and other things. I guess the other, I think the place where I don't think we're gonna see courts closing or judges eliminated. We actually added a few last year. Where you're gonna see more of the pressure and the challenge, I would imagine, is in areas like interpreters, kind of the pretty essential court reporters and clerks, that kind of stuff, and very essential parts of the court system. But, that is where I think there's going to be more pressure than on the judicial staff itself. So I think that's the place to keep our eye out for, I guess, if I were to make some guesses. So, but I do think that, by and large, the court system has done a pretty good job, and I guess the other thing where we can generate savings if we need to is the lessons we've learned from the last 4 months in how to operate, this way. There's constitutional issues that come up in terms of confrontation, and there's importance of being in person in a lot of ways, but there's a lot more that could be done, I think, virtually. And the fact that we've now learned how to do it better, I'm hopeful would be another place that we can actually generate some savings, so we can keep the personnel in place and get the work done, but just do it in a little bit different way. So it's a good question. I hadn't really thought as hard about that one, but it looks like we're going to have to. Yeah, hopefully it won't be the same kind of budget deficit we had, though. $6 billion would not be very fun to face again. So, good. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, again, thank you for joining. And again, really good to see everybody. And please do what you can to get the word out. So that's going to be the kind of campaign this is going to be. And we are online a lot. We've already gotten about 2.5 million impressions with our online ads, but we need to really reach a lot of Minnesotans to make sure that this goes the right way. So thank you again. Have a good day.
Thanks for reaching out to us.
And thanks, Aaron, for organizing it.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Aaron, say hi to your kids for me.
I will. Hi, Sam.
Who would? All right. Take care.
Take care.